Hey everyone, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get right down to beginning the workshop. So let's go for it. So we're going to be working in Flutter today. So for those of you who don't know, some of you are probably wondering what is Flutter. You guys just went through a lengthy installation process. You're probably wondering what Flutter is, who's it made by, and why use Flutter for mobile development. So Flutter is actually a UI toolkit developed by Google for building native mobile, web, and desktop applications. In the workshop, we're going to specifically be focusing on mobile development. So why use Flutter for mobile development? Well, for one, Flutter allows you to have one single code base. So if what that means is, like, let's say you're developing iOS, normally you would go through their native code, such as Swift, and you would develop an iOS app in just Swift. And then you would have, if you wanted to have an app like an Android Google Play Store app, you would have to go and make code for Android as well. Well, Flutter eliminates that. You can work in one compiler and do all your code in one single code base. And if you ever need to make a change in both of these applications, you can just do it in Flutter. And Flutter allows you to work inside of widgets. It's more friendly to understand than a lot of programming language. Well, Dart is the programming language, and Flutter is the UI toolkit that we're going to be working with. Now, Flutter allows you to manipulate widgets and a whole bunch of cool objects that you're going to be seeing throughout this workshop for us to build this application right here. We're going to be building a COVID-19 informational app that allows you to find out where, like, a near testing area around you, call a number if you need this, call the CDC hotline. If you want to see all the stats available for confirmed, deaths, and recovered, we're going to do all of that for you. So I'm going to link this repo down below into the chat so you guys can actually access it. I'm also going to provide it in the Discord, but let me just open up the chat really quick. And send it right in here. Cool. And we're going to need this GitHub repo because we're going to go ahead and get the link right here. And then we're going to go ahead and open up Android Studio. So I have it opened up already. I'll give you guys a few seconds to go ahead and open it up. All right, and once that's open, is it staticky still?
Yeah, I think your internet might be a little unstable.
Let me see.
Restart your screen share.
Stop it?
Yeah, stop and then start again.
Okay.
All right, that actually made it worse. Okay. Yeah, it looks like it's just your internet connection's a little wobbly right now.
It's weird. Let me see.
Also, for those who are viewing, you can also try setting on Zoom, switching on under view options, set your zoom ratio to fit to window and see if that makes it a little better. Cool. Some are saying that it looks good now.
All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead, and once we have Android Studio open, we're going to click this button right here that says Checkout Project from Version Control. And then you're going to click Get, and then you're going to go ahead and paste that URL. So you're going to notice where this goes into the directory. For me, it's going to go into Flutter Projects COVID-19 Workshop. So I'm going to go ahead and clone it in there. Once that's done, you're going to actually click No here. And then you're going to go ahead and open an existing Android Studio project. I'm going to just paste it in there. There it is. We're going to open it up, click OK. All right. Now that it's open, you're going to see a little bit of code show up. You're going to have this notification that says pubget has not been run. We'll take care of all of that one step at a time. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down here where it says terminal. We're going to click the words terminal, and we're going to just go ahead and type in Flutter clean project. The reason we're doing that is because we pulled it from a repo, so we want to make sure everything's localized to your system. The fact is, you run public Flutter. Let's go ahead and run. Yeah, I got to run pubget first. So you're going to go to your hubspec.yaml, run pubget. And that's going to go ahead and retrieve all the dependencies of the project. So the assets, it's going to pull that. It's going to go ahead and pull any dependencies or packages we're going to be pulling from the internet, which we're going to be talking about more as we go along. And then we're going to go ahead and run Flutter clean again. So we're going to go Flutter clean project. Perfect. And let's just click Get Dependencies one more time. All right, perfect. So a lot of the errors are going to start disappearing. As you can see, nothing's redded out anymore. And we can start moving on from there. So we don't have to actually do that again. So the first step we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run what we have so far. We just started a project and I actually gave you guys a few things to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my phone, which we're going to go over here. And we should have the phone already pre-installed if you followed the installation guide. And we're going to open up and go ahead and open up Nexus 5X API 29. So it takes a while for the phone to first open at first, and for setting up, go ahead and move it right here, just so you guys can see. And then I'm going to launch what we currently have at the moment. So it's going to take a while to first launch it the first time. That's because what Flutter does is it takes the native compilation language. So for iOS, it would be Swift. For Android, it would be its native, which would be Kotlin. And what you could do is you can go ahead and it would compile in Flutter's code and compile it to the native language, which takes a while to actually go ahead and do that, but it's very helpful. So what you're also going to notice is, well, what happens when we click run for the first time? So in programming, whenever we run a program for the first time, it looks for your main method. Your main method or main function, which is right here in our case, is in our main.dart file, and that allows us to act as the entry point to our Dart application and any other application that you would ever work in. It's the first function to be executed. So in our case, it's going to be running run app, which is a function in Flutter, and it's going to call my app, which is what we built down here. So you're going to understand more and more how widgets and all these things end up working. My app is technically a widget the more we get onto the workshop. You don't really need to worry about the main.dart file for now, so we're just going to get it out of the way. And we're going to go ahead and open up the home screen that I supplied for you guys. So you're going to go down to lib, go to screens, and let's open up the home screen. So once the app is done, let me just go ahead and do this real quick. And once the app is actually done loading in, we can see what it looks like for now. It takes a while for the first time. It's still running Gradle. Don't worry about this part for now. All right. Cool. So the app is now here, and I've already gave you guys an app bar and a bottom nav bar. So all this does is this
Your
icon
screen's a little pixelated, Raheem.
right now.
Yeah, it's the upstream internet upstream.
Let me see. Let's see what I could do.
Yeah, I can't really like read anything or.
For sure. Let me see.
Any chance you're able to switch to Ethernet or no?
Not in this bedroom. Let me see. That's weird. Give me one small moment.
Cool. So, in the meantime, do you guys have any questions on what you were able to catch so far?
All right. I made some changes. Let's see if that fixes it. You there?
Yeah, it looks a little better. It's readable now.
All right, for sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the emulator open here, and we have, like I said, we have an app bar with a hamburger icon that doesn't do anything, a title to our app, and we have two pages, a home screen and an info screen. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start actually populating this information. So we first have to understand a few things before we move on. So first, I have a little app right here that we're trying to build. Got a little image. So we're going to have two components here. So essentially, we have this blue blob right here, which has our header. And then we're going to have a white area down here, which is going to be our statistics side. So let's go ahead and start building that together. So the first thing I actually included for you is I build it out everything for you, and you have something that's called a scaffold. So scaffold is something you're going to be often using in all types of widgets when you're building out a page. So the scaffold actually looks like this for you. So if I change the color, you can see that this entire area that was white before is now blue. that's your scaffold area. So for now, we can just change it back to white. And you'll notice we have a custom app bar, which you don't need to worry about. And we have a body with the custom scroll view. The custom scroll view is actually just something we can just go ahead and view everything. Like it can scroll up and down. If we add more things to this page, it allows us to have more options for more different screen sizes. So it has a lot of cool features and attributes that we're going to be working with throughout the workshop. So the first thing we're going to need to do is when we have a scaffold, we can give it a, we have a custom scroll view, so we can do slivers. Now you're going to wonder what a sliver is. A sliver is essentially a widget that's part of a scrolling view or a list view, any type of that, and it's considered a child, and it can have multiple slivers. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second too, and what that really means. But you're probably wondering how I just changed that color in like a half a second. So Flutter actually has a really cool feature called hot reload. So similarly, if you've ever done web development, you'll know that when you actually just save your sheet and you can go look at it locally, it'll change it instantly. Same thing with Flutter is that once you have your app running and you're working inside of a state, and a state is actually just anything that includes that a state is anything that can change data over the life cycle of your application. So if you have a state as such, you can, anytime that you change anything inside of your state, we made a home screen state, everything inside of here can change when we rebuild it inside of our stateful widget. Now that sounds a lot like right now, and there's a lot of cool resources you can look up for state management that I'll include in the Discord down below or in the Zoom chat. But state management can get a little tricky, but at the same time, it's kind of easy to understand, and you'll understand it more and more as we start developing throughout the entire project. So for now, just know that if we have a state, we can, anything that's built inside of here, it can change. And when we call it in our stateful widget, which is up here, we can recreate the state in an instant once we do the hot reload or just press Control S. There's also a function called hot restart, which is going to be really useful as well. So first, we're not going to actually put anything inside of our slivers yet because we don't know what we're doing. So we're going to include something that I talked about. We're going to just do a comment, which is / in Flutter and Dart. And we're going to put header because we're now going to put a header. And let's go ahead and put statistics. So we're going to get back to that. So to actually include the header inside of our scaffold, inside of our white area, we actually need to build a header. So let's go ahead and right here, let's just go and build a header. So we're going to do a sliver to box adapter. And your caps lock and everything is important. Cool thing is you can just press tab if you know what you're going to type, but we're going to just do sliver to box adapter. And what that means is a sliver to box adapter is something that just turns a sliver, what we talked about before, like a widget child, it turns it into a box. And you're going to see how that looks like in a second. It allows us to return that. So we're going to call this build header. We're calling it build header because we're going to build a header every time we call this state. So we're just going to call this, and we're going to go ahead and put double screen height. Now, we're asking for screen height inside of our header. And the reason we're doing that is actually just for responsiveness. If you want to build this on an iPhone, if you want to build this on a tablet, anything like that, it allows you to be very responsive, and I'll show you how. So we're going to go ahead and return a sliver to box adapter. And when you put return on any widget that you build in Flutter, anytime you do return, all you're really saying is that when you call this function, this entire function, the first thing you return is going to be everything inside of here. So anything inside of sliver to box adapter, the widget itself, is going to be what's actually displayed. So we're going to go ahead and give it a child. So what child means is in Flutter, we actually have layout widgets. So there's a bunch of things called single child layout widgets and multi-child layout widgets. Now, basically, if you're a single child layout widget, such as a container, you can only have one child widget. That means a container can only have one widget inside of it, but there's ways to get around that. Let's say you have a container and you have, let's say you give it a column. If you call a column inside of a container, a column can have multiple widgets. It can have as many widgets as it wants. If you call a column inside of a child, and that's how one way you can manipulate how many children you have inside of a single child layout. So that still sounds a little complicated, but let me show you in a second. So we're going to give it a container, And we're going to give this container a decoration. And all that really means is we're going to give it a box decoration. And this box decoration basically just gives our container a shape of a box. And literally all we can do is just do, we're going to give it a color. And we're going to be using a color a lot. So if we're going to be using a color a lot, it's kind of redundant to write the hex code over and over and over and over again. So what we can do instead is go to our, I set this up for you as well. You go to config at the left, and then you click palette. You go to your palette, and you can see I provided you a bunch of colors right here already, just commented out. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a class. And a class is essentially an object-oriented programming, like your blueprint for everything that's going to, for an object. So we're building a class object, and it's going to be called a, let's just say, palette. And we're going to do with our palette, we're going to give it a, we're going to just construct inside of it. So everything inside of here is what makes our palette. So we can call features of our palette later on. So we're going to do static constant color, which means that this color is never going to change. Primary color equals. And in Flutter, when you do a hex code, normally you would do something like this, and you would just put like the numbers inside of it. But what you're going to do is you're going to do 0xff, which actually makes the hex code, copy everything without the pound sign, and put it in here. And now when you look at that, I might have had one more digit somewhere. 0813E3F. Let me see. Oh, my bad. I have to do color. So we're going to call it a color and a color of this. And you'll notice a little color pops up on the side right here. So we're going to go ahead. We can actually import that now. We want to use that color from now on. So we have to bring in that folder that I just made right here. So we're going to go, and we're going to go ahead and call config. And you'll notice that it appears right here. And we can go ahead and do call palette.dart. And now we can actually use that color from now on. So we can just do palette, which is the name of our object. And we can do palette.primaryColor because that's the one we're calling out. And now if you do that, you won't notice anything yet because we haven't given this a size. Technically, it's just, if you look at it in the Flutter inspector, it doesn't really have a size yet. So we're going to go ahead and give it a size. And so the way containers work in Flutter is they actually have they wrap around their child. And that sounds a little complicated right now, but the more and more you see it, you'll understand. So technically this container is just something that's blue, but there's no shape or size or weight to it. But a container basically just gets bigger and bigger as you have more stuff inside of it because it just tightly wraps around the widget inside. So let's say we add a child to it and we give it a text and we just type in hello. If we do that and we look at the child, you'll actually, it's not here yet, but we have to give it a, let's just say we do this. Inside of our column, we're going to give it a child because we want multiple widgets. We're going to give it a column. So we can actually call multiple widgets now. And what column does is when you have a column, everything is laid out vertically. So every widget that you call inside of it is laid out vertically. The opposite of that is a row. When you call a row, everything that you want would lay out horizontally. So how that looks like would be like this. If you look at this photo right here, this container is everything right here so far, but we don't have anything inside of it. When we add a column, the feeling sick, if someone is following you, and a row right here would be all inside of that column. So you would have feeling sick, a text widget, another text widget, and a row containing 2 buttons. Because a row is technically a widget too, and you would have a row right here. So you can have 2 of them lined up vertically and horizontally. So let's go ahead and let's go back to Android Studio. And let's go and add a column and let's give it some children so it can have multiple. So children allows it to have multiple widgets. And let's go ahead and give it a column. So we can give it a column and we're going to give it another column and we're going to go ahead and give it children again. And then we're going to give it a text box. So in this text box, we can go ahead and write feeling sick. Whenever you want to close something off or you want to continue and add something else to a widget, you would have to put a comma afterwards. And you would also have to close it off with the comma over here so you can actually continue. So what that means is I can go here now, and so I'm still inside of the text file, the text widget, and I can give it a style. Now let's say I want to style. So right now, if we look at our text widget, if we just reload this, you won't actually see it yet because we haven't given the entire thing a size. But let me go ahead and reload it. See it on the side. If we go to our Flutter inspector, you won't see the text widget in here yet. So we still need to increase. Oh, the reason we can't see it yet, sorry, is because we have to call the build header over here. Because once we built this, we actually have to call it back over up here. That's the thing we have to look out for every time we build. So in order to see it, we actually have to put it in our scaffold. Because right now we're just building something that doesn't actually do anything. So once we put it in there, we're going to do a hot reset. And now you'll see, if I take off the debug, very, very small, it says feeling sick inside of here, but we don't want it to look that small and ugly. So what we can do is we can add a font and a style to it. So there's a cool thing we could do is we can go to hubspec.yaml, and Flutter, the Flutter team actually allowed us to get rid of this comment. I already wrote it out for you, but normally you would have this, and you would import this package into here. So all you have to do is put Google Fonts. We're not going to put a version like we did over here, because if you leave nothing here, it's just going to take the latest version available of that package. And all you do now is just pub get. All right, so now that we've installed that package, we can go back and we can import. And we're going to import that package into our home screen. It's going to be googlefonts.dart, Google Fonts /Google Fonts.dart, and then we're going to add a semicolon. And it says we're not using it yet. That's why it's all grayed out. So a cool thing we can do now is we can go over here. Normally you would do something like this. You would type style and you do a text style widget inside of the style. So you would do this and you would give it some style. So you could give it a color, you could do all that. But with Google Fonts, it acts the same. You can give it a Google Fonts dot whatever font you want. So in our case, we're going to be using Poppins, which is like my favorite font. So we're going to use Poppins, and this statement right here, Google Fonts dot Poppins, is the same thing as saying style, text style, but we have a family of font included that it just takes from the internet without downloading it on your system. So now you can just do color dot white. So you're going to do color, and then you're going to call colors dot white, and you're going to go ahead and add a font size. And in our case, we're going to use a size 24. And we're going to add a font weight. And font weight is just essentially how thick your font is, if you want to make it bold, regular, light, or whatever. So we're going to go font weight .w 600, which just means a font weight of 600. And we can go ahead and save that and see how it looks like in hot reload. Need to close something off. Oh, so whenever we import a new package, something that's from the internet, we actually have to go ahead and stop our application and run it again because it's calling a whole new package into our cache. So I'm going to take that time to go ahead and ask some questions and see if I can answer any that someone might have answered. So does anyone have any actual questions so far about anything that I've done so far while the app restarts? And if I'm going a little too fast or a little too slow, let me know and I'll slow it down and I'll try to explain everything a little more. All right. If any other questions are added or given, Naz and Oscar will be sure to give you any help. So the app is launching up, and now that we've restarted the application, it's going to go ahead and actually call what we just did. So now you're going to notice, once it's done loading, our font will actually have changed, and it'll have a new color. And boom. Similar to our picture, we have feeling sick, and we're getting close to building our header now. So we have one text file. We can go ahead, and underneath our text file, we can add another text file, and let's call it, what do I write here? So if someone is showing any symptoms, seek emergency care immediately. And let's go ahead and give this some style too. So we're going to go ahead and give it some style. And oops, you want to do this inside the text bracket. So you want to give it some style again. And you want to give it, let's do Google Fonts again. Poppins. And let's give it some color. And we're going to give it a color of white again, colors.white. And let's do 70. Now what 70 means is that we're giving it 70% opacity. So we're going to make it a little translucent, a little transparent, and we're going to do that, and you'll see why. And we're going to give it a font size of 17. So once we do that, we can show our application, and our white app looks a little more transparent. But you'll notice that the feeling sick is centered out right now. So we can go ahead and fix that. If we go to this column, columns have cool features such as you can do some sort of alignment. So we're going to give this a cross-axis alignment. So what does a cross-axis alignment mean? So let me show you what we're going to do first. We're going to do cross-axis alignment start. So it's got to the corner that we wanted. It's actually lined up to the left now. Everything inside the column will be. But why did that happen? So a column works vertically. It goes from up to down. So the main axis of a column is up and down. So you could do main axis alignment as well and do the same thing, or you could do cross axis alignment, which is essentially the opposite. So you would do the x-axis for a column if you do cross axis. If you did a row, the main axis would be horizontally, like the cross axis would be for the column. But if you did a cross axis alignment for a row, it would do everything vertically and line it up that way. So you have a lot of cool stuff you can do. You can do cross axis alignment center, which would center everything in the middle of our widget, like so. You could do cross axis alignment end, which would put everything towards the back side of the column, like a row. But we're going to stick with start because that's what we like. And we're going to go ahead and do some padding because I actually don't like how it's hugging the wall of the app that much. So let's go ahead and go all the way up to our container because that's where we're going to do the padding. And we're going to give it some padding so it doesn't hug the wall. And the padding, we're going to do a constant edge incents. That all that means is that it's going to add an invisible barrier like along the edges that would pad up the widget that we're working with. So I did from edge insets from LTRB. All that means is we're going to do some padding from the left, the top, the right, and the bottom. So we're going to give it 20. We're going to give it 20 over here. Actually, I want to leave it 0 for the top, and we're going to give it 20 over here as well. And then the bottom as well, we're going to give it 20. And then you can see how that looks. And boom, we're no longer hugging the wall like that, and there's padding all around this area. And if you want to see how that looks, you can just turn on the debugger in your Flutter inspector. And you can see that there's no padding up top here because we want it hugging the header. But there's like this invisible barrier that you can't normally see. And that's constantly hugging the inside of the container and pushing things inside. So that's what we wanted. So let's go ahead, and now we notice that this feeling size is a little too close to the text that we wanted. So we can go ahead and do something cool again. Right between these two widgets, we can add another widget called the sized box. And a size box is basically similar to padding in a sense, except you can make it into an invisible box. You can give it a width or a height. In this case, since we're working with a column, we want to give it a height. And we can give it a height of screen height times 0.02. Now, why did I use screen height? The reason I use screen height is because screen height, this variable that we made earlier, what this screen height does is it just takes the size of whatever screen you're working on. Whatever resolution you're working on, it'll take that size. So it can give you consistent variables. So all you're doing is you're taking screen height times 0.02, and you can tweak around with how much space you want between things. So in my case, you see that, how it just instantly went down a little? I only want it 0.02. So if you're working around as a developer on what kind of size you want, you could give it whatever size you want, 0.09, but that's not what we want. So we're going to go ahead and give it a size box, and then we're going to add a row now because we added our text, and the reason we're adding a row is because we have two buttons right here. These two buttons are in the same line to each other, but they're horizontally laid out across. So what we can do is we can make it a row, and in this row we can add a children, because rows can have multiple children inside of it. And our first child is going to be a flat button icon. So we're going to give it a flat button and icon. Now, a flat button icon, dot icon, all that means is that it's making a button that requires you to have an icon inside of it. So here's the 3 things that you need inside of a flat button. You need an on press, you need an icon, and you need a label. So let's take that one step at a time and just get rid of that for now. And we're going to go ahead and work along that. So the first thing we want to do for a flat button is let's go ahead and give it an icon. And this icon is going to represent our call now button. So our call now button is going to have an icon dot call now, sorry, dot phone, I mean. And let me see real quick. We're going to give it icon. We're going to call icon. We have to call the icon widget, sorry, because we're building a widget inside of this icon parameter. And we're going to give it icons dot phone. And the cool thing is we're working with the material dot dart. So we can call off any material icons. If you want to see a list of material icons, you can literally simply just Google it, look up material icons, and you'll be linked to the material website. And it shows you a bunch of the list of icons that you can use. So in my case, I know what icon I want. And let me see. Oh, the reason that I can't see what icon I'm using yet is because remember, to actually build a flat button icon, we need a label and we need an on press. We only have an icon. So let's go ahead and add an on press. And for now, you can just leave it empty. So you're going to do a parentheses and a curly bracket. So you're going to close it and just do it. We're leaving it empty for now because Naz is going to later explain how we're going to get data inside of our buttons. So let's go ahead and now we're going to do a label. So a label is just going to have whatever text we're going to put inside of it. So we're putting a text widget and we're going to put call now. And our call now is going to be another text widget and we're going to give it a style. And we can just leave it a default font. It doesn't matter right now. We can give it a default font and let's give it a font size of 16. And let's give it a font weight again of 600. 600. And let's go ahead and give it a color of white. So our text will be white. So let's look at how that looks. And boom. So we have the call now written and we have a black icon. So let's go ahead and give our icon some color as well. We're going to go in here. Same thing we do with the text. We're going to go ahead inside of our thing and we're going to go give it a color. And we're going to give it white. And then we're going to go ahead and give it a size. And let's make it 36. And now you can look at it right here. And whoop, we got it looking just right. And we got the call now button looking right, but we don't have a border around it. So let's go ahead and give it a decoration because that's how we typically go around adding the boxes around it. So instead of a decoration, we're going to just go ahead and give it what a flat button icon has a parameter called shape we can use, an attribute shape, and we can just give it a shape. So we want to use something in Flutter called a rounded rectangle border. And a rounded rectangle border, we can give it a border radius. So it's just giving us a rectangle that we can give a border. And the border radius would be circular. So we're going to call border radius on border radius and give it circular. And let's give it a circle of like 30. And let's see how that looks. We can't see it yet because it doesn't have a color. So we're going to give our entire button a color as well because our button doesn't have a color. Now let's go ahead and I actually gave you the color for the call now button as well in palettes. So let's go ahead and use that again. And let's get rid of this. We're no longer using that. And there's a call now button. So let's go ahead and build the same thing we did up top here. So we do static, constant. We're calling a color, and let's call it call now color equals color. And let's put in 0xFF because that's very important for each time we call a hex code. And let's go in here and put in the color we want. And now we have a little red on the side over there. All we can do is click save, go over here, back to our button. We're back at our button and we're going to go and add a color. and let's call it call now color. So it's going to call palette call now color. And let's save it now and see how it looks. So look, we got a button, but it's too tightly hugging the call now and the icon. So what we want to do is we can actually go ahead and go and add some padding again. So flat button icons also have a padding feature, and you can go ahead and give it a feature of constant, edge, insets, and this time we're going to do dot symmetric. Now the reason we're doing dot symmetric is because dot symmetric comes with two features. It has a padding, a vertical padding and a horizontal padding. So we're going to do vertical. So that means only top and bottom. We're going to give it a padding of 10. So let's see how that looks. Perfect. So only the top and bottom have padding of 10, like an invisible 10 around the button. But now let's give the horizontal an invisible padding of 20. And boom, we have the call now button looking pretty much how we want it, but it's hugging this thing up here too hard, and we don't want that to happen. So let's go ahead and add a size box right before the row, and let's go ahead and add an invisible box before we start adding our buttons. Let's give it a height again, and let's give it a height of screen height times 0.02 or 0.02, which is 2%. And let's go ahead and save that. And now you'll see there's a big space between it, and we can go ahead and give it some more, what's it called? We're actually done with this button pretty much. I want to make sure everything's good. Yep. Okay, so now that we're done with this button, we can go ahead and actually minimize this on Android Studio. We can go ahead and copy this if we want. And underneath it, we can just paste another one. We can open this one up, and now if we click save, we have two call now buttons. Now, the first thing we want to fix is how closely wrapped they are to each other, and I don't really like that. So we can go ahead and we can do a cool thing. We talked about alignment before and main axis alignment. So let's go ahead and look at the debugger. So we want it to be spaced out. There's a cool way you can do that on the main axis. So remember, a row works on a vertical axis. So we want to go ahead and do main axis. On its main axis, we want to do space between. So on the main axis between every widget, it's going to create a space. So here's how that looks. Now let's take off the debugger, and that's the space in between it. So it pushes it to each side, and now we have two buttons. And let's go ahead and let's change the second button. So let's change the text to get tested. We got our button changed, and let's go ahead and change the color to, well, actually, let's change the icon first. And the icon we use for this one is healing. It's a material icon called healing. And let's go ahead and change the color now. So we're going to go back to our palette, and I gave you guys the color for palette as well. So we have get tested button. Now let's go ahead and remake this over here. Static, constant, color, and let's call it the get tested color equals color 0xFF, and we're going to put that in there like that. And now look, we got a little blue over here, and we can pretty much go back over here, and we're going to look for where we had the color for the icon, and it's right over here, palette, call now color, and we can do palette get tested color, save that, and boom, we're pretty much done with the header. The buttons look a little bigger. We can fix that later, but we can actually move on to the statistics side. So before we move on to statistics, does anyone have any questions that I can probably answer regarding what we did so far?
Just to put it out there, you guys don't have to follow like our exact color scheme or our design rather. You can change up the colors, you can use a different color for the button, etc. There's a lot to play around with, particularly for the icons. If you look up in the Flutter docs material icons, there's a bunch of other icons that you can use.
Yep, pretty much that. So there's a lot of icons you can mess around with, and honestly, I can go ahead and just Google it for you too. I could show you some material.io material icons, and we can go right here and we can look at icons by material design. And these are all the icons available to you that you can use. And all you have to do is get the name for it. All you have to do is get the name for it, like it says book, euro symbol, eco, and all of those are actually available on your when you import material, which we do every time we build an app. So let's go back to Android Studio, and let's go to build header. And we built our header. Our header's done. We kind of like it where it's at so far. Now let's go ahead and build the statistics. So we're gonna do the same exact thing we did before. And we're going to build a sliver to box adapter, which is basically a sliver, which is just a child of a scrolling widget, essentially. And it's going to do build statistics. And we're going to do double screen height. And we're just going to start it off like that. And right off the top, we can just go ahead and build it in here. We can call it in here, build statistics. So now our scaffold is going to call this empty statistics, which nothing's in here so far. So let's go ahead and fix that. So our build statistics is going to have a return call again, because whenever you build a widget like this, you need to return something. So when you have scaffold, it's just going to return whatever is inside of here. So we're going to return another sliver to box adapter. And we're going to put a little colon after that. And let's go ahead and give it a child. So same thing, we're going to give it a child and we're going to give it a container. Let's make this container have a height. We want it to be about 450 big. We want it to be that big because we want it to take up this entire white space. Now we can go ahead and give it an actual shape, because right now it's just an empty container with nothing. Let's give it a shape of box decoration again. Let's go ahead and do a color for it. We can give it a color of, let's just say we give it a color of blue for now. And let's go ahead and give it a border rate. Well, let's not do that yet because I want to show you what we did. So now we have this. And you're going to notice that we're going to go ahead and do a border radius because we want it to look like this. We have these little rounded shapes here at the edge, you can see. And I want that effect on our app too. So let's go ahead and implement that. So all we're going to do is a border radius again for our box decoration. This time we're going to do border radius dot only. And what that means is we can specify what edges we want to apply the border radius to. So we're going to do the top left, and we're going to give it a radius dot circular of 20. And we're going to give the top right a radius dot circular of 20 as well. And you can see how that looks. But you're going to notice there's like this little white chip here. And that's because the scaffold in our original home state up top, the main scaffold that we're displaying, has a background color of white. So let's go ahead and change that to palette.primary color and check it out. You'll notice that it's filled in blue, and all we can do now is go back here and change this to white. So if we do that, we have our effect of the same rounded edges that we have over here. So now the only things we're missing are the tab bar and our actual statistics. So let's go ahead and work on getting the tab bar up and running. So underneath our container, we're going to give it a child, and we're going to give it a list view. Now list view, essentially all it does is it displays everything similar to a column, but it displays it all in a list going down, which is kind of cool. It also has multiple children, and you'll see what I mean because it can actually scroll as well. It works really well with the scroller. And we can give it children, and we're going to give it a child of default tab controller. Now this is where all the magic of our tab bar happens, and our default tab controller. So our default tab controller is basically what controls us from clicking. So if we click on confirmed, it's going to manage what happens when we click on confirm, debts, recovered. So if I click on debts, it's going to go to the debts page. If I click on recovered, it's going to go to the recovered page. So we have to start with this and have all the tab bar and everything else that goes with the tab underneath it. So we can give this tab a length. And the length, all that means is how many tabs we're working with. So we're working with the confirmed, the debt, and the recovered tab. So 3 tabs. And then we're going to give it an initial index of 0. So the reason we're giving it an initial index of 0 is because in programming, whenever we have a list or we have indexes that we're working with, we never start at 1 2, 3, we actually go 0, 1, and 2. So we always want to start at the initial index of 0 because that's what our confirmed tab is going to be. So far that should be kind of self-explanatory, and then we can just give this child a column. And the reason we're giving it a column is because we want everything to be laid out vertically, going downwards, because our tab bar starts here, and we want all the information inside to be inside, going downwards. So we're going to give it we're going to give this column some children so we can have stuff inside of it. And the first thing we want to put is a tab bar. So the tab bar is going to have we're going to give our tabs, and we're going to give it some tabs. So, oops, sorry, it's lowercase. We're going to give it some tabs, and you can put whatever widget you want inside of tabs. So in our case, we're going to put 3 tabs, and we're going to put a text tab of confirmed. We're going to put a text tab of debts. We're going to put a text tab of recovered. And we're going to go ahead and save that. And if you look here now, you're going to notice this random weird little blue line. That's literally all that is our tab. So if you actually go over that, Flutter actually has a default indicator. What happens if we actually click on a tab? So it gives us a little blue line. So let's go ahead and fix that. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and go inside of our tab bar again, and we want to give our labels, our unselected labels, a color. So whatever tab we're not clicking on, we want to give it a color. Now let's go ahead and do an ASCII code for this. Let's do 0xFF, and let's give it an ACABBB. It's like a nice little gray I like. And you'll notice that anytime we're not clicking on one, we can actually see the text now. So we have debts and recovered. So now what we want to do is, I like keeping my labels together. So I'm going to type a label, and I'm going to give our label some padding. Let me go ahead and add, what's going on? We do label padding, and let's give all of our labels a padding of edge insets dot all of 10. And that's going to push everything down right where we want it. So it pushes a 10 away from the top. And let's go ahead, and now we want to add these little bubbles, right? We want these pink bubbles right around our text. So let's go ahead and do something called an indicator. An indicator. So technically, Flutter already has an indicator. It's those blue lines underneath our text, and we want to give it a default indicator. We want to give it our own indicator. So let's go ahead and give our indicator our own decoration. So we want our indicator to have a box because it's inside of a box. We want to give it a box style, and it's going to have a box decoration, and that box decoration is going to have a color. But we're going to be using this color a lot, so we want to go ahead one more time, and we go to our palette, and we're going to use this final color we have here, so we can get rid of these two, and we want to use the tab indicators. So we can go over here, static, constant, color, and let's put tab color. And let's just make it have a color value of 0xFF, and it has EC6969, and boom, we have this nice little pink here. And we can go ahead, since we already have palette imported into here, we can go ahead and do palette dot tab color. And now if you do this, we'll have this random weird square going around our stuff, but we want to give it that round effect. So let's go and add a border radius, and let's give it a border radius of circular, and we can do 20, and that should give us that nice round shape that we want. Perfect. But you're gonna notice it's tightly hugging the top, and we don't really like that. So the reason that's happening is because we're inside of our list view. So list view actually has padding available inside of it, and we can give our padding a constant edge insets dot all, and it's going to push everything inside of it 20 away from the edges, just like that. Now we have a debts tab, a confirmed tab, and a recovered tab, and you can already see that we're getting pretty close to what we want to do, but we want to start stylizing our text a little more. So we want to go ahead and go over here, and we want to give label style. And what we can do in our label style is just do a text style. And we want to give it a font weight. Let's give it a weight of 600 again. So it's nice and thick. and we can give it a font size, and let's give it a font size of 19. That's the size I like our font to look like. And now it looks just like our picture. So now we can go ahead and start working on what's inside of the tab bar. So with tab bars, they aren't displayed the same way you would have a normal tab bar displayed. So what I mean by that, oh, also, let's give it an on tap so we don't forget for later. So what that means is whenever we click on a tab, it has an effect. We haven't worked with these yet, but let's just put index. And what that means is whenever we click on a tab, it changes the index of what tab we're on. So remember, we had an initial index of 0. So whenever we click on a tab now, we're actually on a new little page down here. Everything inside of our container is part of that page. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and build a container as another child for our list view. And we're going to give this container, let's give it a height. Let's give it a height of 250. Let's give it a child. And this child is where we're going to view everything happening inside of our tabs. So this is a tab bar view. A tab bar view, all it means is that every time we click on this, it's going to be created right here since it has a height of 250. We haven't implemented it yet, but basically a tab bar view would be everything right here. This square right here, when we create it, it'll have a height of 250. You can already see it. It's all the way up here. So we're going to give it some children. And we're going to put our tabs in here. So normally we would put our tabs. So we can just do text for now. We can just put confirmed. We can do another text. And let's do debts. Let's do another text. And let's give it a recovered. And the reason we're doing text for now is just so I can show you what's happening every time we switch tabs. So let's take off the debug so you can see what's going on. So what I meant, when you click on it, this is what happens in the tab bar view. You see this confirmed. If you click here, now you see debts. If you click here, now you see recovered. So we want it to be a custom thing. So if we actually go ahead and invent what we want inside of that tab right here, it's going to be a lot of code. So the best thing you can do, best practice, is to go and build your own widget, our own confirmed tab widget. So let's go ahead and let's go to our widgets file that I supplied for you, and let's build a new Dart file, and let's call it confirmed tab underscore, and it'll build a new Dart file. So we can go ahead and start building this really quick. So what we're going to do in here is we're going to import some important stuff that we're working with, which is the material. Let me see if anyone has any questions so far either. Does anyone have any like specific questions? If they're lost, what's going on, what a class, or any of the imports or anything? I'm checking the chat as we speak.
Also, feel free to type in your questions if you have a question that needs like elaborate detailing. We can also answer it in the chat for you as well.
Yeah, Naz and Oscar are constantly viewing the chat, so they're waiting to answer any sort of question you may have. But I'm trying to be, if you want me to go slower, I could go slower and try to explain everything in more detail. But yeah, we have a little bit ahead of us. All right, let's go ahead and add another package. We're going to be using Google Fonts again, so let's go ahead and import that. And let's go and let's build a class. So remember how last time we built a widget for palette? We made a class palette. Let's build a class for our confirmed tab. Extends stateless widget. Now the reason we're calling it a stateless widget is because essentially every time we call this, everything inside of the phone is essentially stateless, and it rebuilds every single time. So every time we switch tabs, it's going to rebuild in here. It does not have a state. It is constantly changing state, and you'll see what I mean. So let's go over here and let's do override. And the reason we do override is just so you can actually call on this from somewhere else. It allows us to override whatever's going on in here. So when we call it, and we're going to do widget, build context. We don't need any of this right here. So we're going to build another widget build. We're building a widget, and we're building context of context. So whatever we're building is inside. We're building this, and we're going to return something again, because every time we build a widget, we're returning whatever we want displayed. and we're going to go ahead and give it a semicolon right there. And now this column, the reason we're doing a column is because everything inside of this that we're going to be calling is going vertically. We're displaying it vertically. So we want a column inside here. So we want a children, because column can have multiple children, and we want to give this children another container. We want to give it a container, and we want to have this container include, let's give it a color of, for now, let's make it something you can see. So let's just make it blue again. Let's give it a height of 250. And let's see what this looks like. So remember, we called a confirm tab up top. So if we call the confirm tab, we need to go ahead and import that package. So let's go ahead and, I don't know why this is like that. Let's go ahead and import our file, which is the confirm tab. So let's look for it. It would be inside of our widgets. And we can go and put confirmed tab. Now it's here. And now we can use that tab. So let's get rid of the confirm portion right here. And instead, we can call, instead of a text file, we can call a confirm tab widget. So let's see how that looks. And we have this blue square now. So we have a blue square, and this is where we're going to be working inside of for the rest of the widget. So everything in here is where we're going to be calling all the data. So let's go ahead and give it a child. And this child is going to have a column as well because everything inside of that. So everything inside of this is being displayed like that, but these two are also being displayed like this, if that makes sense. So you have everything in here, the size boxes and everything, but then you have everything displayed like this as well. So we're going to give it a column. And whenever you're confused on something, you can always go to your debugger and look at it in there, how everything's shaping out. And children, we're going to give it a widget. And so let's go ahead and work on the color. So we gave it a blue, we have a column, and we're going to go ahead and add a container inside this. Now this container is going to pretty much be our wall, our little black border that we have here. This black line, we want that border. So let's go ahead and do a container. Let's go ahead and give it a shape. So let's give it a box decoration again. And let's go ahead and decorate this box to have a border. We want it to just have a border, and the border on every side, border.all on every single side, it's going to have a color. And let's give it a black color. And let's go ahead and give this a width of 1. We just want the line to be the size of 1. And now you're going to notice that if we click save, we have this weird black line over here. But why do we have that? It's because a container takes the size of its child. So if we go ahead and we go inside of our box decoration and give it a child of text, and we just say hello again, you're going to notice that everything wraps, all the containers wrap around that hello. So we're kind of banking on that to wrap around our stats boxes that we have in here. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of the child for now. And we like where the box is at, but we want it to be a little more rounded. So let's go ahead and give our border, let's give our box decoration a border radius. And let's give it a border radius of circular. And we're going to give it a radius of 30, so it's nice and round. And it's going to look like that now. So let's go ahead and give our our container a child again. And let's give it a column. Oopsie. Let's give it a column. And inside of here is where we're going to have our stats boxes, this column, inside of the black bubble. So let's go ahead and give it some children. And let's go ahead and give it a stats box. Another way you could do this is what Oscar's going to be talking about. We have a lot of columns and containers going on. Another way to do this later on, is Oscar's going to talk about it, is a stack. A stack allows you to overlap things together without building a bunch of containers and everything. And you'll see how that looks when Oscar starts explaining. So let's go ahead, and we're going to also put our stats boxes in here. But our stats boxes is another widget that we should just import because we're going to be changing our stats boxes a lot. So what I mean by that is, let's go ahead and let's make a new Dart file. And let's call it stats boxes. And now that we made that, we can import material again. We can import our Google Fonts. And we're going to be using some of the colors that we used previously. So let's import palette, which would be in config. And then you just type in palette. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do class stats boxes because we're building a new widget object. And we're going to do, it's going to extend a stateless widget. So we're building an object of stats boxes, and it extends, it inherits from a stateless widget. So we're building a widget. And we're going to do another override like we did before, so we can call on it somewhere else. And let's go ahead and build this widget now. So we're going to do widget, and we're going to do build context again. Widget build context, and now we can build the widget inside of here. So we're going to return a container again, because every time we build a widget, we want to have a container. And we're going to give it a height of, let's say, 65. And we're going to give it a, also, by the way, I noticed that we reached the 1 hour mark for the workshop part 1. So we're going to be beginning workshop part 2. If you guys want to take a second, ask any questions, stretch around for like 3 minutes so we can start on the next one. We're almost done with the first page, and we're getting on to the data, and we're going to get on to we're going to get onto the info pages that Oscar has, and we're going to get on to implementing actual real data into our application. So let's take a quick second, let's have a little break, and then we'll go ahead and go back at it. We're almost done with the first page though. So does anyone have any questions? You can go ahead and type, have anything that you want to say why we're not doing certain things or anything, and I'll go ahead and answer in the chat.
Just a reminder, we will be pushing up a full version of the app after the workshop, and we'll also be finishing out the workshop too. So there's a chance we might go over time, but we won't go over time by a lot. It'll just be a few minutes extra. Albert, where will the recording of this be? So I believe the recording, I think Charles, are you there? Charles, no.
Yeah,
Charles.
hello.
Where will the recording be posted?
Most likely on the UP YouTube, but let me confirm that with you 1 second, and I'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
All right,
So
for sure.
we'll wait on the answer for that.
All right, and once he's back with that, we can pretty much in like 2 minutes, we can just go ahead and keep running back at it. We're almost done with the first page. I know it's a lot to take in, but pretty much everything we're doing is starting to come together now, and you can see that. And we're almost done with the first page. And then once we're going to do is we're going to start the info, and then once we're done with these little boxes in the middle, we can go ahead and put real data into it. And that's probably near the end, so we're almost there.
Another thing is, for the sake of the workshop, as you can see, we're using an emulator, right? But if you want to actually test the app on a fully functioning phone, you're able to do that. Ideally, the ideal way to do that is you could just plug your phone in, and then Android Studio will recognize your phone. But after this workshop, if you guys are interested in that, you can ping one of us, and we'll be more than happy to show you how that would work.
All right, once Charles gets back, we can go ahead and continue.
Yeah, so it will be on the UP YouTube channel, but just give us an hour after the workshop to have it processed and all that.
All right, for sure. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
All right, so we can go ahead and just continue now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give this, we added a container, and this container is basically going to be this, our stats box. So one stats box.
Helleman, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name. The installation, there was no installation workshop. However, if you need installation assistance after this workshop, feel free to tag one of us. Or after the workshop, me, Oscar, Raheem, we can go ahead and help you out, help you get set up with Android Studio.
All right, so anyway, this container that we're building right now is gonna be one stats box right here, one of these pink boxes. So we're gonna give it a height of 65, and we're gonna give it a decoration, and we're gonna give it a box decoration again, and we're gonna give it a color, and we're gonna use the same color we used for the indicators before. So we can just do palette, and we can do .tab color, and now we have a color for it, and we want it to be a little round too. So we can give it a border radius again, like we've done before. Give it a border radius of circular, and let's just put 20 in here. And now we have a border radius of 20, but we're not done yet because now we just have a container and we need stuff inside of it. So far this is what we have. We have a row, we're gonna have a container, and we can go ahead and test this out too. We can just put it inside of our widget or our column, and we're gonna have stats boxes. Let's import it first. So you're gonna import stats boxes.dart. You can just type it like that, and then you can just test it like this. So you're gonna do stats boxes. Let me see real quick. Stat boxes. Let me import the entire file. So you're gonna do import widgets, and you're gonna do stats boxes.dart. Cool. And I also realized that it's not turning in because there is a syntax error, and I think that should take care of it. Stats boxes, yeah, cool. So if we do that, just like that, and we put it in here, boom, we have one box. And essentially we want two boxes in here. So we're gonna go ahead and put stats boxes. But before we get ahead over there, we're gonna go ahead and make sure that we, one, I wanna change the color back to white. So let's do that real quick. And then let's go finish up our stats boxes. So we have these two boxes and they're wrapped around this border container, and now let's fill them up with some information. So our box is going to contain, our container is going to contain a child, which is a row. And the reason we're doing a row is because this and our data are both in line vertically and horizontally. So we want a row, and in our row, we're going to put some children, and our children are going to have an icon. And we're going to also give it a text file. But the thing is that when we give it an icon, let's say we give it an icon called icons.dashboard, right? Let's say we give it an icons.dashboard and we give it a text of hello again. The issue is we're going to have an icon like this and a text file like this that we can't change every time we call it. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we can call a custom icon and a custom text file every time we call stats boxes. So how we can do that is we can go to our class underneath this. We can go ahead and add we can add some variables. Let's make final, which means it'll never change. We're going to make an icon data. So icons are stored in icon data on the material package. So we're going to make an icon data icon. And we're going to make a final string. And if you don't know programming, string is just basically a string of characters, a line of characters, or words that you want to, characters that you want to put together. So whenever we type hello, that's a string of characters saying hello. And we're going to go ahead and put final string data, because every time we call data, that's going to be custom text. And then you're going to notice it's red. It's because we haven't initialized it. So we need to go ahead and make a constructor. And a constructor basically allows our program to, our class stats boxes, to initialize these variables. So we have to build it inside of here. So we're going to make it required. And required means that whenever a user calls stats boxes, it is required they input an icon. So we're going to do this.icon, which means whatever icon is submitted. And we're going to do required and this.data. And now they're initialized. So that means icon equals this icon, whatever icon was submitted, and this. And it required means that whenever they're going to put stats boxes, you're going to notice it doesn't work anymore, because they need to put in, the program is not going to rerun because it says it requires it requires data and it requires icon. So all we have to do now is go ahead over here and put icon, and in here we just have to put data. And now all we have to do is just stylize our icon. So you'll see how that looks like when we actually call on the icon. So let's go ahead and give our icon some color. Let's give it white. And let's give it a size of 36 again. And let's go ahead and give our text some style. So let's go ahead and call style. And let's give it some Google font style again. Let's call my favorite font Poppins. And we're going to go ahead and in our style, we're going to give it some color. We're going to give it white. And we're going to go ahead and make it size 30. And then we're going to give it some weight again. So our weight, we're going to give it this time, instead of 600, we're going to give it 500. And that's basically our file for that, except we're going to come back to this and we want to make some spacing and whatnot. It's colors.white, sorry. And now all we got to do is when we come back to our confirm tab, we just got to put a custom icon in there. So we're going to type icon. We're going to call the icon parameter. And we're going to put, let's just say we want to put icons.public. And then we need to give it a data file as well. So let's give it a data. And let's put an arbitrary number for now. Let's put 1 million. Same thing in here. Let's put icon. Let's call icons.flag. And let's go ahead and call an arbitrary number again. Let's just put 1000. And we are missing something in our stats box. Let me see.
Positional arguments.
Yeah, I'm just seeing where it is. Oh, right here. We have an extra comma right there. There you go. So now that'll work. And look at that. We have a stylized text and we have two logos, but they're too close to each other. So remember last time we did the spacer with the row? We're going to do something a little different. This time we're going to go ahead and do something called a spacer, which does the same thing, except what it does is it pushes whatever widget is in between the spacer across from each other along the axis. So if you look at that in the data.dart, in the debug, you'll notice that it's just pushing this all the way to the other side of the row. So let's just go ahead and let's actually, right behind the text, let's add another widget. So it pushes it into the size box. And let's give the size box a width of 50. And now if you look at it, there's a space over here, how we want it. And now all we can do is just make sure everything's padded up together properly. So let's go ahead and add some padding. So our row, we can't actually add padding to our row. So what we got to do is we actually have to apply a padding widget, which allows us to pad everything inside of it. It's a cool thing Dart has implemented into it. So let's go ahead and pad our row. Let's add 10. Oh, by the way, I just did that by fast adding a widget. So what you can do is you can click on the widget and you can click Alt space, I believe. No, it's Alt Enter maybe? Yeah, Alt Enter. Or you can just click on the row and you can click on this little light bulb right here and you can wrap this whole row with another widget. So in this case, we're going to wrap it with padding and we're going to give it a padding of 10 or all around it. So here's how that looks. Perfect. Now all we got to do is make sure that everything is inside the black lines and not completely wrapped around it. So we're going to go back to our confirm tab and we're going to look at where we can add our padding. So everything seems to be contained inside of this container right here. So we're going to go to this container and we're going to give it some padding. Let's give it some padding of edge insets all around. We're going to give it some padding of 20. And that's going to look like this. So it's going to push everything away from the corners all around outside. And then we're going to give it some margin. And we're going to give it edge insets dot all. And we're going to give it some 20. So that's going to be everything inside. So everything inside is going to be pushed together. And we're going to have a space error, but let's go ahead and fix that. So now we need to pad our stats boxes. So let's go ahead and do that. 1 second. Let's go to our stats boxes. And now we're going to look for where we can fix this. So everything seems to be pushed together inside, and I think we can go ahead and go to our row, and we can look around. I want to see where I can add some padding and margins to push everything inside of it. Let me look at my debug really quick. Oop, wrong one. Okay. All right. So I think we can go ahead and add some padding inside of our, I want to see where I'm missing it. It would be in our confirm tab, and it would push everything inside. So we have everything pushed inside by 20, and we want to go ahead and make sure everything's pushed inside more. So, trying to see where I'm missing it. So it would probably be inside of this container, though it seems like it's not reading the margin correctly.
What if you tried just doing like a height of 65 on it instead of 250?
Where at?
That container has a height of 250. Try doing 65.
Oh, I mean, the issue that I'm having is that the black inside, it's not pushing everything in. So I gotta find where I have that again. That's what I'm looking for. It's right here. So it would be in this container. So in this container, so there it is, sorry about that. So in this container, we want to go ahead and add some padding as well. And let's give it a padding of, let's just say edge insets 10. That should do the trick. Okay, perfect. It didn't.
Maybe try reducing the border radius from 30 to 20.
30 to 20.
Yeah.
That's just how circular it's going to be.
Okay.
I got it. You just have to put some padding inside of the container containing the border. So I just couldn't see where that was. I found it. So we're going to go ahead, and now we're going to, we don't want these stats boxes so sized up like that. So we're going to go ahead and in between them, we're going to add a size box, and we're going to go ahead and do, let's just give it a height of 20 for now. And that should push everything else. You're going to notice that we have a little bottom overflow, so we can go ahead and just fix that for now. It's not a best solution, but let's put it in the other one. Let's go ahead and put it in here. So normally you would have it with the screen height, and you would make a you would tweak around with what percentage you want the height to be, the container, but that would take a little while to actually show you that on screen. So for now, we're just going to make it at a height I know is fine, which is 300. And then we're going to go ahead and do the final touch on the first page and add a text file, which is right over here. It would be inside of this. Yeah, it would be text. And let's go ahead and put these numbers are updated daily. And you can just give it, let's give it a nice little font. Let's give it a style. And let's just go ahead and do Google Fonts.roboto. And let's go ahead and give it a color. Ooh, it's Roboto. Let's give it a color of 0xFFACABBB. 0xFFACABBB. And let's go ahead and save that. Oh, we have to add a closer. There we go. And boom. We're going to save it. Where is it? I don't see it. Let me see. Why isn't it loading? It's weird. I'm going to work on fixing this little issue right here, but pretty much that's our whole home screen. And that we can now move on to the info screen while I just fix out the little bug right here. And now Oscar can take over and show you how to build the info screen.
All right, cool. Yeah, so let me start screen sharing my desktop. Okay. All right, so I'm going to continue. Share my desktop right here. Okay, cool. All right, so I hope you guys can see the screen. Move this over to the side like this. Yeah, so for this section, we only going to be working on 4 additional files, and this will be for implementation of this page right here. So if I show you the preview, this is what we're looking for. So we're going to have a title, a description, an image, and a little carousel here for the slide. So this will be like a sliding mechanism from left to right. So we're going to have 3 total slides here. So that's why we have these little dots on the bottom part. So here's the end product, and here's what we're going to start doing now. And so to start, we're going to have to create our first file. So if we go into screens, we create a new file. We're going to name this file info.dart. And here's where we're going to put everything here together. So as per usual, we're going to import material.dart. And then later on, we're going to import 2 more things. But let's first get on with working on this file first. So here we're going to create our info screen class. This will be a screen we're going to add. And then this will be a stateful widget because we want to have multiple stages or multiple states changing along because we have multiple slides. So each of those slides will be a state. And then once we scroll left to right, it means that we're going to change the states. So that's why we use a stateful widget in this case. Just add the state. So just like before, info state, create statement right here. Then I'm going to link that to or such. And now it's going to create this class right here to get rid of the error. Yes, state of type info screen. And here we're going to create our first variable, which will be the current page, and this will be the page that we're currently on. There will be 3 total pages. So here will be a variable to keep track of that page. And next up, we're going to create our page controller, which takes care of the detection of the slides and doing the animation from left to right. Here is gonna, inside this option, it's gonna put our initial page at 0. So we want to start at 0. We close this up. And here. Now we have to do a build so we can get rid of this error over here. So, well, before this one, actually, I forgot to mention another method that we have to use, and this will be the onPage method, which will take an index, and this index will be the index of the slides because we have 3 slides, so each of the slides will have their own index. And here's we're gonna be able to set our state or change your state accordingly. State like such, and here's gonna link our current page to the index of the slides. All right, so this method is gonna pretty much be able to keep track of when we change our pages, and so it's gonna execute and it's gonna update our current page. And now here's where we do our build. We need this 2 lines, so we can get rid of these 2 lines. And here, just as before, in the pages, we're gonna return a scaffold. We're just gonna do a little bit of styling so that we know that everything is working up to now. So we can put any random color that you guys want just to start seeing some changes on this window. And now in order to run this, to render this, then we're gonna have to go into our bottom nav screen, and we're gonna have to add our screen here. So a new created screen, we're gonna have to import that or screens right here. So if you type screens, you should be able to see the entire path. And over here, we want to add our response. I believe I named it. It should be info string. The info that dar, right? So it will be our file, and here's where we have to add our newly created screen. Right. Once that's done, we can go back to. Oh, sorry, this thing's getting on the way. We can go back to our info page, and it's hard, and I'll reset that to see any changes. So you guys should see a new change for the colors that you chose here. So we know that everything is working fine up to now. If you guys have any questions up to this point, just drop them down into the chat, and the other guys will be able to help you. And so now, before moving on with this, I'd like to create our model data, because since we want to create multiple slides, then we have to create our sort of a skeleton for those slides. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna click on our left folder. We're gonna create a new directory. I'm gonna call it model. Did I do it right? No, I don't think I did it right. Actually, I did. My bad. Okay. So inside our model, we're gonna create our slide dart file. So I'm gonna call it slide.dart. And here, what we're gonna do is, just like before, we're gonna import our material. Dart. And here's gonna create our slide class. So first, just our instance variables, just like I mentioned. I saw. Oh, I think I closed down the preview. So as I mentioned in there, we had three things. We had the title, or description, or URL, in which we're going to link their image to. And here we're going to have to create a constructor that's going to take or require fields. So here's everything will be required. So as Raheem went over this a couple minutes ago, everything will be required. So the user has to input this when they create a slide object. So here's required this dot description and that image URL. Right, so we close that. And this will be the end of the class. And now here's we're gonna create an array, a list of objects of type slide. So since I mentioned earlier, we're gonna have 3 slides, so we're gonna have 3 leads in here. So for the first one, this one is gonna take a title. And actually, let me excuse me for a moment. Let me just look up for my screenshot that I took. I believe it's around here. This one's gonna be this one, and keep it in. Sorry about that. And what I was going to say is, as you guys see, we have a title, we have a description, we have the image. So for this one, we're gonna start with this very slide. So the title will be a wear mask. So we're just gonna write that, wear a mask. Description will be cover your mouth and nose and around others. And our image URL will be, you're gonna have to go into the assets folder. We're gonna go into images folder, and we're gonna look for the mask girl, the PNG file, and that will be our first slide object. Now we have two remaining ones, so what we're gonna do is just gonna copy paste these, and then we're gonna copy paste these, this one, and then we're gonna create the other ones. Just gonna modify the contents of them. Okay, so here, you guys cannot see the other ones, but I have the info here. This one we're gonna call it wash your hands. And here we're gonna write the description, wash your hands for at least seconds. Here it's going to modify our file name. So this one will be wash.png, and same thing for the last one. So social distance. Description will be keep 6 feet times. And we're gonna assign the correct social distancing image.png. Right, and lastly, we're gonna just close this array, and we're done with the slide. A skeleton here. And before we actually start rendering or testing this out, we're gonna need another file, because this only provides a skeleton for the slides, what they're consisting of, which are these three things. But then we're gonna have to have a structure to put this in. So we're gonna have items of slides, and we're gonna have 3 items. So to create this, we are going to go into widgets folder. We're gonna create a new file, and we're gonna call it slide items.dart. Now in this file, as usual, we're gonna import our material.dart. We're also gonna import our Google fonts, because here we're gonna do some styling to the text. And since we want to manipulate or slide objects, then we're gonna have to import that as well. Okay, so the way we do that, we go to relative path, and then auto slide, we get to that, to our slides there as well. Now we have all of our imports, and now we're just gonna start creating a class. So slide item. Yes, it is widget. Here, as I said before, there is some index assigned to the slide. So here's where we're gonna initialize our index. Slide item. Okay. And then I'm gonna move on and quit creating or override or build before the widget context build, and get rid of these 2 lines. We don't need those. And in here, we're gonna just return a padding. You can also return a container, but in this case, we're just gonna do a padding, which will allow us to, like you guys see in the preview, pad everything to the center, so it will be perfectly centered. So here we're gonna do some styling here. So the padding, we're gonna include the edge insets. We're gonna use all because it's for all for the directions. We're gonna use a padding of 20 pixels on all directions. And here we're gonna use a column, which will be, you guys go back here, this will be a column, the title, and then the description, and then the image as well. So here, we're gonna center them both. So we're gonna do X axis. Just gonna simply type center, and just gonna type center and then click tab, and it will take you right there. And then we're gonna do for the other axis, and then click type center, and then click on tab. And now we're gonna give our children to their column, and we're gonna do the first one, which will be the title. So we're gonna have a text widget here, and then here's we're gonna retrieve our information from our array that we created. So here we'll take the index that we're currently on, and then we'll take the title. Now we're gonna do a little bit of styling to it. So we're gonna our fonts. So Google Fonts Poppins to keep it consistent. And now we're gonna do a little style on it. We're gonna do the color. We can do the color black. And I'll put the font size a little bigger because it's a title. And now for the font weight, one too skinny or too thick, so just, I'm gonna put it at a weight of 400. And now we want to center this widget text. So we can type center and then click tab, and then it will take us right there. So this will be centered. As you can see here on this image, everything will be centered. And now we want to add a little spacing so we can go to the next text widget. So over here, we want to do it outside of text widget. So in this case, right here, we use a size box. So that will give us a 10 pixel spacing between this text and the other text. And so now here's where we're gonna start with the next one. Just like before, we're gonna retrieve our description from the list. So we're gonna access the current index, and then we're gonna get our description from there. And styling, Google Fonts, Poppins. Colors, we're gonna keep it as black. Size, since it's just text in this case, we're gonna reduce it down to half, so 20. And then font weight, we're gonna keep it the same. Font weight of 400. That we go down here. We also have to center this one. We do center, type center, click tab, and it'll automatically do it for you. And here, that's when we do the second one. And here we want to add a spacing below. So we just do the same thing. In this case, we're gonna keep it a little more spaced out because it's an image that's gonna be below that. So we're gonna keep it at 20. We're gonna add a space of 20. And now here's what we're gonna add our image. We're gonna call image that has it. And then we're gonna access it from our list. So index, current index, image URL. Then we're just gonna add a little more spacing below it so that it doesn't feel too cluttered. Also 20 in this case. Okay. Now we're just gonna close all padding because that's where we're returning. So we have to close this with a semicolon, and that should be everything for the slide item start, that dark file. So now to see all this implement or reflected on your screen, this we're gonna import these into our info page. So let's go back to our info page. Let's do I'll just import the 2 things that I mentioned earlier. So here we're gonna import or slide that dart. Slide that dart. And here we're gonna actually do an import for the widgets, that. And here, if we go into a widgets file here, you guys can see all the imports or the imports that we're going to use outside of this. So if we want to use any widget, then we can just add our file here and it will get imported. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to add our newly added file. So you can see it's highlighted in red. So slide that dart, and that will be part of the entire package that will be imported. So we go back into our info that dart. And so to do it again, we can just go back here and then go to widgets, and then it should already automatically detect our widgets folder. Click on it, and then here's where we're gonna import our specific files. So in this case, would be the slide items file. That would be our third import. Now let's go back into our build method here. I'm gonna finish this up. So below this, we're just gonna change this back to a white background. And here, we're gonna do our body. But it will be a container. And it will have a child. So here's where we're gonna use our stack. So I know Raheem mentioned a little bit of this. So to give you a brief overview of a stack, you guys can go into this page, onto the Flutter documentation page on the stack class. And it's pretty much what a stack, if you guys have taken data structures, a stack is, if you can visualize it physically, is stacking things on top of each other. Like literally, like if you go into a restaurant, you see plates being stacked on top of one another. So it's the same concept in code. So what we're gonna do here is in this screen, our main stack will be this entire thing, not including the little dots. So it will be the title, the description, and the image. So this will be the container, and then that will be the first stack. And then, as you guys can see here, you see the red one is the first one, the green one is the second one, and the blue one is the third one. Means that the green one is on top of the red, and the blue one is on top of the green. Likewise here, the buttons or the dots will be on top of the first one, which I just mentioned. So that's why we did a stack, because we stack things on top of each other, and then the bottom layer will hold everything that is on top of it. So we only have to use a single element, because any other element will be on top of the first one. And so inside of the stack, we have to do some alignment, because we want to keep it at a center. So we can simply do alignment. Gotta do bottom left, bottom center, and we have to specify its children. And here's where we have to call our page view, because this one will be the thing that will take care of the animation and the scrolling from left to right. So here we have to specify our scroll direction, which will be the x-axis, so horizontal, axis horizontal. We'll have to add our controller. Here's we're gonna have to add a page controller that's gonna detect the sliding and provide animation. And this is the thing that we created here. We have to add our onPage change method. That's gonna detect when the page is changed and update the current page accordingly. We're gonna have to add our item count, which will be the amount of slides that we have. So in this case, it will be 3. So we just can simply give the length of our array or list that we created. And item build is pretty much going to build the slides and render them into the screen. So here is going to give a context, be our index, and it's going to pass us over to our slide item, and I'm going to give you the index of that slide. So enter the file. Right. So everything's looking good now. And so if we were to render this now, let's going to click on hard restart. And we should see our pages rendered here. So now the functionality of sliding to the left and to the right is complete. And so now what's left is to add little buttons or dots here to signify which slide we're currently on. So this is what we're going to do next. So for this, we're going to create our final or fourth and final file on widgets. We're going to call it slide dots, dart. In this file, just like usual, we're going to import our material.dart. And then we're going to create our slide dots class. Extends this widget. And here, we're going to do some Boolean operations so that we can detect when the current slide is active. So Boolean variable color is active, and then we're going to give that to our constructor of this class. So here it's going to be this that is active. The reason we do this is if you look at our preview here, is to tell the code that whenever we're in the current slide, we want to highlight that. We want to emphasize that. So here, whenever it's active, or we're in the current page, we want to make sure that the dot corresponding to that page is emphasized, is highlighted, is of a different color, and is bigger in size. So that's why we do this final Boolean variable here. Now, we're just going to do our build. Get rid of these 2 lines. Here it's going to return an animated container because we want to animate the buttons moving left to right. We have to provide a duration to our animation. Give it very briefly, milliseconds, 150. You can always play around with this to your liking. And we're going to provide some margin so that they're not cluttered up together. And here we're going to use symmetric because we only want to add the margin horizontally. So symmetric means that we're just going to give it an axis. So in this case, we're going to give it the x-axis or the horizontal axis, and we're going to give it a spacing of 10 pixels per dot in between. So they're going to have a 10 pixel blank space between each dot. We're going to give it a height. And here's where we're going to see the concept of ternary operators. Pretty much being a simple if-else statement in a single line of code. So if I start over, we're going to see, we're going to think of it as if it's active, then we do this. So if it's active, then we're going to set the height to 12. Else, if it's not active, then we'll set the size to 8. So a simple if and else in one single line of code. Now, for the width, we also want to do the same. If it's active, then we're going to increase the width to 12. Or if it's not active, then we're going to just set it back to 8. Now we have to include a decorator so we can make our dots circular or round. I'm going to use a box decorator. And again, here, we're going to change the color. So whenever it's active, as you guys see here, whenever it's active, we want to make the color blue. Else, we want to make them a little gray. And so that's what we're going to do now. If it's active, then we get our primary color. So we're going to type theme of context, of the current context, and then primary color. Else, we're going to just give it a blue grayish sort of color to it. And now it's gonna make our buttons circular. So we're gonna do our border radius of all, means for every direction. Let's give us our circular radius for that. So we have a radius of 12 pixels. And here's we're gonna close our return statement, and that will be everything for select dots. So here's our implementation all for dots over here. So now to put them on the screen, we have to go back again. Move this over. Let's go back again to info page. And here's when I'll complete the entire build method. So after our page builder, we're gonna include another stack. So here's the other stack that I was mentioning. Second stack that will be on top of the first one. And here's gonna also give us an alignment. I'm gonna give an alignment of, let's go say top center. You can also play around with this. It's not really strict. And now it's gonna give the children to the stack. It's gonna hold our buttons. I'm gonna give it a margin. And this margin is gonna be from the top up. So this margin is gonna be from this bottom bar all the way to the top. So we're gonna give constant edge index, and we're only gonna give it only one direction. So that's why we use only. So because we only want one direction. So this direction will be bottom. I'm gonna give it a 35 pixels space in there. Now we're gonna use our child of row because we want to order our dots horizontally. So we also have to align these, center, and align those to the center. And then here's where we have to add our dots to this row. So we're gonna add the children to the row. And in here, since we already have our list with the slides, we have to traverse that list and then render the dots accordingly. So we're gonna go, it's gonna a simple for loop. Here's where we do some logic. So we're gonna check if the current index is equals to our current page, then that means that we have to render our dots. If it's render that. So whenever we're in the current page, we have to render our current dot. If it's not, then we have to just set that to false. Set dots. Okay, so in let's see. So I'll reload it again.
Check your imports.
I was checking that again. Oh, my bad. I didn't. Yeah, you're right. I need to add the import into that. So we're going to add slide dots, and then that should fix the issue. I'll go back to our info page, and that should be.
I don't think you ever imported widgets at the top. Oh. Yeah, you
Yeah.
never.
Oh. Or no, I need to just import the widget selector. There we go. That has all the inputs in there. Okay. All right. So now I fixed it, and then as you guys can see already, we have the dots here, and then once we scroll, for the active page, we have our dots highlighted, and it seems to be working just fine. And before I end this section, I just want to add a little bit of an extra content here. And here's where we're going to have our dispose method. And what this method does pretty much is just it disposes of unused memory, or it amounts the memory of the state. So whenever we change our slides, we're changing states. But for the page controller who's taking care of the slides, as of now, everything is getting logged into the page. Like for every state, it doesn't matter if we move away from it, it's gonna keep the memory for that state. So in order to make it a little more responsive, that like once you test it out in your mobile phones, basically, because now it seems pretty responsive, but if you try it out in your mobile phone, it's gonna be as responsive. So to make it a little more responsive, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna dispose of the unused memory when we change our states or slides. So once we change to the second one, we're gonna unmount the first one and so on, just like this. We changed to the third one, we're gonna unmount the second one. So here's what I'm gonna do in the dispose method. Super is gonna dispose super, and then we're gonna also dispose the base controllers. So that's what I was talking about. Base controller is gonna dispose of the unused memory from the states that we're not currently using. And yeah, we can just reload that, and it might seem a little more responsive, but the real change will be reflected when you actually use it in your mobile phones, basically. All right, so if you guys have any questions, concerns, anything to add, just ask them down in the chat. But the section is complete. And now I'm just gonna pass it over to Naz. It's gonna finish it up and then talk about the API information that he mentioned earlier.
Sweet. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Sure.
And let me know when you ended your screen share.
Yeah, I ended it.
Alrighty. And what's poppin', everybody? We're almost at the home stretch. So now that we have built most of our UI, it's time to add some functionality to it and to add some real-time data to it. So the first thing we're going to focus on is we're going to go ahead and give those buttons we created, that call now and get tested button, some functionality. The goal is we're going to give the call now button, when we press it, we want it to actually go to our phone's call button and actually put down the number for us so that it's ready to call. And for the get tested, we're going to make it so that it opens up Google and it goes ahead and takes you to a site that has all the testing locations available to you via site. So without further ado, there's a couple of things that we gotta do first, right? For the buttons, the first thing to do is we have to import a package called the URL launcher. And what the URL launcher does is that, let me actually pull it up here. HTTP, whoops, Dart URL launcher. And what the Dart URL launcher does is exactly that. It allows us to access our Android phone's call feature, and it allows us to access its browser. So how are we going to use this URL launcher? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our home screen.dart, and we're going to import the URL launcher first. So if we type in, Raheem, was it pub.get first or import first? I always seem to forget that.
You go pub.get first, and you can download the package.
Okay, so the first thing we got to do is get the dependency first. So if we go to our hubspec.yaml, we had it there for you. You can just remove the comment. We're going to import the dependency like so. URL_launcher, click pub.get. And then now we can go ahead and import it into our home screen. So URL launcher, package URL launcher, .dart, right there. And then once we have imported that, we can go ahead and build our emulator. Whenever, as stated in the beginning, whenever you add just a reminder, whenever you add a dependency to your pubspec, you have to rebuild you have to do a hard stop on your emulator and press play again. So let's give us a moment to do that. If you guys have any questions about what's going on so far, feel free to hit it up in the chat, and we'll go ahead and answer it for you. If you have any other questions after the workshop, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be available, all three of us, for the majority of the hackathon. until the end. So just ping us on Discord, and we'll be ready to help you out. As always, it takes time for the emulator to build. If you guys, when you guys are building the emulator and you come across this red error, it's not an error, it's more of a warning, and it's saying that the URL launcher is currently being upgraded, so that the version that's currently out there is being deprecated. And what that means is that they're in the process of upgrading it, and it will still work, it's just a newer version is coming out soon. Cool. So as we can see, when we click these buttons, nothing happened, right? So in order to go ahead and fix that, we can first do the call now button. And if you guys remember in our code, when we made the call now button, we had added a method called onPress, right? This onPress method right here. So we're gonna go to the onPress method, and we're gonna go ahead and work add our code for this. So in order to actually use the call feature on your phone, the URL launcher package has this built-in method you can call called launch. And what this launch method does is you take in a string, and depending on what you type in the string, it'll launch your browser, it'll launch an email, it'll launch your phone, or it'll launch a fourth thing I forgot, but you can check it out in that package I had sent. So we're gonna go ahead and add in the phone number first for the call now button. So for this particular call now button, we're gonna type in these words, tell : // and that basically tells the launch method, hey, I am going to use the phone. And then once you write the phone feature of our app, and once you write the tell : // you can put the phone number. In our case, we're gonna go ahead and do the actual national COVID hotline phone number, which is 800-232-4636, I believe. Missing a parentheses here. And once that happens, we can go ahead and do hot restart. Restarts the application, click the call now button, and boom. It goes ahead to your actual phone screen, your actual phone call button, and it writes the number out for you. So you can just go ahead and press call to access that. So now we have the call now button. Let us go to added the functionality for the get tested button. So we can go to the get tested buttons on press function, type in launch, takes in our URL. So we're gonna type in here the website. So for the sake of this workshop, we're gonna go ahead and use COVID testing site. We're gonna go ahead and use the hhs.gov link, which gives you all the locations separated by state. So we just copy this link right here, minimize that, add the URL here, semicolon, save, hot restart, and let us click the get tested button. And as you can see, it opens up the browser to the link, and you can browse the different testing locations. And that's how you add functionality to the buttons. Any questions so far? We're gonna take just a quick minute to let that sink in, and if anybody has any questions. Cool. So we'll just go ahead and continue. I don't see any questions now. So now that we have added the functionality for the buttons, we can go back and now add live data to these, right? Now, how do we add live data to these? We're gonna use something called an API. What an API pretty much is if you think about it like the kitchen, right? Imagine the kitchen as the API Imagine the kitchen as the back end, or something that's going to give you the live data, and the person eating is going to be the front end or the mobile app UI itself. The waiter who goes and takes your order and brings the food to you, you can think of the waiter as that API. And instead of actually paying for our service, we're gonna actually use a set of standards called HTTP, which is basically how we're gonna connect to this API. Luckily, Dart has a package called HTTP that allows us to do exactly just that. So we're gonna go ahead and install some dependencies for that. But before that, we need to actually have a file that contains all of our data and all of our calls and API. So to do that, we're gonna go into lib, create a new directory, call it data. In this folder, we can create a file, a Dart file, and call it data.dart. Right? Don't ask again. Data.dart. And here we can go ahead and do some imports. So the first import that we're going to do is the HTTP convert and INTL. I'll paste these right through here so you guys can see it. And we're gonna go over some of these. We're gonna go over these one by one. So after we do these imports, we go back to our pubspec.yaml, and we can go ahead and uncomment out this line and uncomment out this line. And that allows us to start HTTP and our INTL dependency, which we're going to talk about later. So run our pub.get. And since we used our, we added a dependency, we have to stop the app and rerun it again. And while that loads, we can go ahead and start, thinking about how we can go ahead and we can start looking at where are we going to get this data from? What API are we going to use? So since to get COVID related data, there's this really cool site called disease.sh, where it's an open API and they have some cool data that you can get. How to use this data, you go on disease.sh and click on docs. Once you click on docs, it'll take you to this page and you can see the different queries on how you can, the different types of data that you can get from each API call. So let's say this V3 COVID-19 alt is for global data. So you can get information about COVID in the global sense. And as you can see, we have a couple of parameters or fields. We have cases, today's cases, deaths, today's deaths, etc. How can we access this and get some live value? This is how we're going to do it. We're going to go ahead, open up a new Google Chrome tab and check out the API itself. How do we call onto it? We call onto it like this: HTTPS, oops, not caps, HTTPS://corona.lmao.ninja. I'm not sure why, but disease.sh mask link is corona.lmao.ninja. I think it's a pretty cool name, at least. And we're going to append the V3 COVID all to that URL, just like they tell us to do it here. Whoops. Just like they tell us to do it here. So once we append that, click enter, boom, we have some live data here. We have this data format here, and this data format is called a JSON object. And inside this JSON object, we have a bunch of content, and that's also known as the body. So we have information like today's cases, total cases at 14 million, deaths at almost 600,000 plus, and recovered information that we need. So now if we want US data, we can do the same thing, //corona.lmao.ninja, whoops, / we do COVID-19 countries.us. And in this link right here, you can find information for specifically the USA. So now that we see the API that we use and the data that we're available and given, let's go ahead and place our order, quote unquote, place our order to the waiter. How do we do that? In code, we're gonna go ahead and to this Dart file, we're gonna first have something for our data. Essentially, you can think of it like a plate. So something to put our food on, or like a table rather, the table to put our food on, right? And we're gonna use something called a map. It's a data structure, like Oscar had mentioned, stack was a data structure. A map is also another type of data structure. If you want more information on it, you can just look up Flutter map data structure, and you can read more about it on the Flutter docs. So we'll call it world data, a map for the world data, and a map for the US data. And we need to be able to store these URLs somewhere so that we can call them, right? We can store them in a string, final string world data equals, add the URL link for the world data, this COVID-19 all, Corona Ninja, Corona LMA Ninja link, semicolon, and then a final string for US data. And I know that we're over time, but we're almost done, so just bear with us for a little bit longer. We're gonna go ahead and import this link right here for US data. And now that we were able to, world data is already defined. Oh, sorry, we're not calling it world data. We're gonna call this global, and we're gonna call this USA, right? And now we can begin calling or placing our order for the API to the API, or calling our API. So we are gonna do that using a method or a function. So we can call this function fetch global data, : // and we're gonna use a special type of function called an async function. And what that says is we're gonna call the data, and once the data is called, we're gonna do something with it. That's essentially what this async function allows us to do. So we have our async function here. The first thing we're gonna do is store the data that we call into something, and we're gonna store it into something called a response. That's gonna equal await and http .get global. And what this allows us to do is it's taking this await function, this await key sign, and all it's saying is saying, hey, I'm gonna wait for this http.get method to finish, get the data, and then I'm gonna store it into response. And now the next step, what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually see if we connect it or not. And to do that, we're gonna use a conditional, an if statement. So the HTTP package, to see if we're connected or not, is gonna return something called a response.status code. And that status code is either gonna return a 200, which says we are connected, or something else saying we're not connected, basically. And if this equals 200, we are going to take the JSON data and we're gonna store it into our map. So world data dot, and to how to store that, we're gonna use something, we're gonna use a built-in method from the convert package called json.decode. Decode, and then what are we gonna decode? The response.body, and this response.body is the content that we see in our API over, if you see in the background, semicolon. Else, we're gonna do something called, we're gonna do an exception. We're gonna throw an exception, and basically what this means is, whoops, there should be a capital T. What this means is we're basically gonna say, hey, if we don't get a 200, if our status code doesn't return a 200, we're gonna go ahead and throw an exception, and that exception is gonna say failed to load data. And that's the function for the global. We can go ahead and copy and paste this and do the same thing, but for our US data. So we can change the method name to US data, change this URL to USA, because we're gonna be fetching USA, and map it to our US data map. And the last thing we're gonna do is, in order to call these two functions, we're gonna put it into another function called future, of type future. And what this allows us to do is, we're gonna call it fetch data. This allows us to before calling this fetch data, it's gonna allow us to run these two methods, this global data and this US data, in our fetch data method, and it's gonna call the API and get its data for us and map it all for us. So this is also gonna be an async function. brackets. And what we're going to do is we're going to do fetch global data, and we're going to fetch US data. And now we have finished up our data. We can go ahead and call it. So we can go to our home screen, and we're going to call it in our void initial state. What this void initial state method does is that when you begin the app, it's going to initialize your tab controller, which goes ahead and initiates the tab that we build here. And it's also going to do a super.init state, which is just saying that it's going to do it for the whole entire app. So we're going to do our fetch data call here, and we're going to import that package. So import package data.dart semicolon. And we can see our method. So we can go ahead and open up our emulator, press save. Now, how can we actually see that we got that 200, right? We're going to install another tool called Flutter Stetho. If we look over here, it's a tool that allows us to see if we got the 200 or not. And to initialize that, we're going to go ahead and add this. We're going to first import it. So we're going to go into our main function. That's where we're going to have our Stetho. Import Stetho. I believe for this one, we have to first import the dependency first. So we're going to go back to our Hubspec.yaml, type in Flutter Stetho, and then colon. Click save, or pub.get. And then we can import the function. So Stetho, flutter.dart Stetho. There you go. And now, since we added a dependency, we're going to have to restart our app again. And while that does, the last step is to actually initialize our Stetho to be able to use that tool. So you do that by stetho.initialize, comma. So let our app load. Once our app loads, while our app is loading, after we initialize this, we save. And then we're going to go and open up a new tab. I believe I have a new tab, and we're gonna type in this new tab, this command here, Chrome comment -- inspect, and what it's gonna show is it's gonna show up our app, and then we're gonna see the app in just a little bit while it boots up. So it booted up, and give it some time for the app to show up. Do a hot reload one more time, or a hot restart. Restart application. App is on. Give it some time to load up. This usually takes a bit for it to recognize it. For some reason, it's not showing up. Let me see that I properly initialized it. Stetho.initialize my app. Data.dart is not showing any issues. Let's try doing a hot restart one more time. Apps, extension. All right. For some reason, it's not working at the moment. We'll come back to this in a little bit. So once we go ahead and do that, while we wait for that to load, maybe it's taking some time, let us actually go and call the API, actually put the data from the API. So we're going to go to the confirm tab, the death tab, and recover tab that we had before, right? And instead of the hard-coded 1 million value we had here, we're going to do world data. Whoops. We're going to access it like this. World data cases for our confirmed cases tab, .toString. Oh, and can't forget to import. This is important. Importing the data.dart package. Package Flutter Cobet workshop data, data.dart. Right here, we can go ahead and roll data.cases, change this one to US data.cases, US data cases. Oops, forgot to put that in quotes. .toString. And then let us save and see, we have live data now. This is the same data that mimics these two. 14 4 row and 313. We have live data now. So let's do that for the rest of the tabs. So in the debts tab, we're going to do the same, except the difference is going to be, let me copy and paste this. You can just copy and paste this. In the debts tab, we can go ahead and change this to debts. Oops, debts. And then change this one to US data. We have to change this to US data because that's for the US data. And then change this to debts. And we're having this error because we didn't import it. So we have to import the data.dart package. Oops. There you go. And then save. We can go to the debts and see we have the debts data. And now lastly, let's do it for the recovered. This is going to be recovered. And then this one is going to be also recovered, but we're going to call US data for this one. US data for this one, and then import it lastly. Data.dart. Save. And boom, we have live data for these three, right? Let's check on our stethoscope, Flutter Stetho, and see if that initialized or not. Still nothing. Let me refresh. Let me restart the app. Let's see if it runs now. Still not doing it. Looks like there's something wrong with this at the moment. We'll take a back into later. Oh, right here. See, it showed up right here. So the app will show up right here, and when you click inspect network, on network it'll show you your HTTP call and see if it gave you that 200. So you would go here, hot restart, and then we can monitor it. And boom, see, status 200 200. And that's how you check to see if your network call went through or not. So then the last thing we want to do is, now that we have this live data, right? We get this error. Let me show that one more time. We get this null error when we launch our app, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. But first, we notice that our data, or when you switch tabs, that error is gone, and we're going to explain why. But if you look at the data, there's something missing. We're missing these the commas for our data. Without it, it looks kind of ugly, right? So we're going to go ahead and use another package from Flutter, the one we imported, called the INTL package, which stands for internationalization. It allows you to format this data so that you can add commas. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is at the end of this file, we're going to make a format variable, and we're going to call on the number format object from the international class that allows us to say, hey, if we see an integer, we're going to add commas to those integers. And then what you have to do is go for here to your confirm tabs.dart, and every place where you made the API call, just wrap it around formatter.format. And then inside the formatter.format, we're going to put the cases here. And this is important. When you use the formatter, make sure the toString part is after. Whoops, I named this wrong. This should be formatter. There you go. Formatter, save. This toString is going to be at the end after this rolled cases. So now let us do the same thing for all the other places. Paste that here, change this to US data cases dot toString. We're going to do the same here. Change this to debts. Whoops, miscalled it. Do the same here and change it to US data and debts. So debts. And then we're going to change this to US data. And we're going to do the same thing for recovered, except, whoops. This is going to be this, and we're going to change this to recovered. And we're going to do the same thing here, and change this to US data, and change this to recovered. Let us hot restart. As you can see, we now have commas for pretty, and it makes the numbers look a lot better. So now we can tackle the error. So let us hot restart one more time to get that error back. Whenever we launched our app, we're going to get this error. And the reason why we have this error is if we look back at our home screen, right? We do our fetch data, and at the same time this fetch data is being called and is doing its thing, it's catching its data, the UI builds. And our issue is that the UI build finishes before fetch data can finish. And if we look back at what fetch data does, fetch data is calling these two methods, and what these two methods are doing is it's doing our API call, getting the data from the API, and then mapping it to our maps, right? Mapping that data to our maps. So our issue is that when we do all of that, it takes time, and the UI ends up finished building before our fetch data can be finished doing its job. So how can we tackle that? One way we can tackle that is by adding a splash screen to our app. And we've already provided the splash screen for you, so you can take a look at how to build it. But we added that for you. You can just highlight all, command slash. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the fetch data instead of in this home screen. In this home screen, we're going to go to the splash screen, do the call here in our initial state here. Oops, fetch data. Let that save. And then since we now have a splash screen, we have to go to our main method and change this home so that instead of pointing to this screen here, it's going to start with the splash screen first. So we can do a hot restart. Let's take a look at our app. Cool splash screen. And boom, the error is gone. We have live data. We have our pages. We have our call now functionality. And lastly, we have our get tested functionality. And that concludes our app. We've given it live data. We have a nice, good looking UI. We have some functionality. And we made the data look pretty. One more thing I want to point out that before it wasn't covered in the beginning was the dispose method for the tab controller. This is needed because when you click on this, for it to be responsive, just as Oscar explained his dispose method, that same logic works for our tab controller, where it makes this more responsive. And that is pretty much for our app.
It also stores less memory. So it's going to, every time you switch a tab from confirm to det, it's going to get rid of all the memory from the previous call. So for example, if he switches back to confirmed, it's going to do a new call, and it's not going to store the previous data. So it allows us to keep getting fresher data too.
So if you guys have any questions, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Feel free to hit us up, ping us. And Charles, are you there?
Yeah, what's up?
Okay, so we, feel free to ping us, and if you guys have any questions, we'll be available on the Discord. I know that this wasn't the most optimal way, but after this, now that the workshop ended, you can find us after. We can help you with the app. We can help you with installation or anything. Ping Naz, Oscar, or Raheem, and we'll be able to help you guys out. We hope that you enjoyed the follow along. And Raheem, closing remarks?
Yeah, and I was going to say, if you guys wanted to see the complete project, like the GitHub repo will provide that as well. Actually, it's the same repo link too, if you want to go ahead and look at that. The same repo link has the complete project at the end, but it's in a different branch. If you don't know how to access that, we can just teach you how to do that as well. If you don't know GitHub that well, we can help you out and figure out how to get the whole project. But yeah, everything's available, and if you need any help on anything, we're here the entire time.